I'll be happy enough for both of us, said my sister, who stole John from me. She sent me an invitation to her wedding with John, trying to show off. But Mom and I will go, I said. We'll make it a real spectacle. Normally, my parents are kind and rarely get angry, but they'd had enough of my sister's bad behavior. So we went to the wedding with a fierce smile. The ceremony turned into a nightmare, not a celebration. My name is Hannah Turner. I'm 24 years old and work as an illustrator. I'm newly married, not even a year into marriage, and my relationship with my husband, John, is strong. We met through a friend and started dating quickly. He proposed at a restaurant with a beautiful night view. Our wedding was blessed by family and friends, a ceremony filled with smiles. One day, as I was about to send John off to work, I noticed he left his smartphone in the living room. I brought it to him. John, you forgot your phone, I said, handing it over. He took it, looking a bit panicked. Thanks, that really helps. See you later, he said. As he rushed out, I felt something was off about his haste. That was the beginning. After that, John started carrying his smartphone with him at all times, even at home. I felt suspicious, but I couldn't believe John would cheat, right? We had been getting along well without any major issues, so I reassured myself that everything would be fine. However, my trust was soon shattered. After finishing hanging the laundry, I returned to the living room and noticed a notification on my phone. It was an email from an unknown account. Hey, long time no see. How have you been? It seemed like someone I knew, but I had heard of scams pretending to be acquaintances, so I decided to ignore it. If it was important, they'd call, I thought. Hey, don't ignore me. I can see you've read it. Ignoring your sister. That's just like you. Always so mean. The moment I closed my phone, it rang again, and the message was from the same unknown account, calling me sister. Indeed, I have a sister named Sally, but she's a troublemaker in many ways, such as financial issues. Sally often borrowed money from friends for various reasons and then cut off contact without repaying them, leading to my parents and me frequently facing the backlash. However, because she was their daughter, my parents ended up repaying her debts. Then, there were complaint issues. Sally would immediately lodge complaints over the smallest inconveniences. Her manner of complaining was terrible. She would hurl abuse and even force those who came to apologize to kneel, making her an extremely problematic customer. And then, there were issues with men. Sally loves men, especially those who are already taken. She didn't care if it was a friend or a family member. If she set her sights on a man, she'd pursue him. This caused friction with friends, and the fallout often landed on my parents and my doorstep. Because of her behavior, I wanted nothing to do with Sally, and we had been out of touch since she left home. But seeing the word sister in the smartphone message gave me a bad feeling, and I hesitated to reply. Whether it was Sally or some imposter claiming to be her, I wanted no part of it. However, my phone kept pinging annoyingly until I decided to open it to block the sender. What I found was shocking. Ignore me all you want, but John is mine now? So hurry up and divorce him, okay? Thanks for finding such a great catch, Fernie. For today, John won't be returning to you, so I'll send over the divorce papers. Make sure to file them quickly. The message read, accompanied by a photo of John and Sally together. I didn't need confirmation to know it was true. My hands trembled as I sat down, overwhelmed by shock to the point of feeling faint. Following Sally's words, John never returned home, and all I received were the fill-out divorce papers. Attempts to contact John were met with complete silence. Suddenly stripped of my happiness, I was overwhelmed with sadness and anger, becoming emotionally unstable. Why, John? I spent days in tears. After a few days of calming down, I decided to contact Sally. What's your intention? Let me talk to John. You've been ignoring me all this time, and now you contact me without even a hello or apology. What's your intention? Excuse me, you're the one who should be apologizing. Just send John back here for now. No way, he doesn't want to come back. He says he loves me far more than he ever loved you, and why should I apologize? It's your fault for not being able to keep him. No matter what I said, it just didn't get through to her. I was already in a terrible mental state, too tired to worry or think anymore. I finally realized it was hopeless. Clinging on would only make me more disliked. After this exchange, I closed my phone. I was done dealing with Sally and had lost all affection for John, who had chosen her. Before I knew it, I had signed the divorce papers, and just like that, my once happy marriage came to an end. My life became a mess after that. Perhaps due to the severe mental stress, I struggled to eat, feeling more exhausted than usual. I looked so haggard that my coworkers were worried, and though I tried to assure them with a smile, it seemed my body and mind were reaching their limits. Eventually, I collapsed at work. Waking up in the emergency room, I found my parents and a close coworker by my side. "Hannah, can you recognize me?" Hearing their voices brought me back to full consciousness, and I looked around. I realized I was in a hospital, recalling my last memory. "Oh, I collapsed, didn't I?" My dad let out a sigh of relief. "We were shocked when the hospital called. Aren't you overworking yourself?" he suggested, but I knew the real reason. It was the stress from John and Sally. "Ah, maybe," I muttered. My mom quickly pressed the nurse call button to summon a doctor. After being examined, they decided to keep me in the hospital for observation. "Are you eating properly? Getting enough rest?" My dad bombarded me with questions, worried, while I assured him I was okay. My mom asked him to buy some drinks and anything I might be able to eat. He agreed and left the room. "Hey, Hannah, something's up, isn't it?" my coworker said. "I thought so too. You've looked worn out lately, and this has never happened before." Women are said to have keen intuition, and it seemed to be true. I sighed and told them both about everything that had happened. I found myself crying in the middle of explaining, realizing I had reached my limit without even knowing it. I thought I was okay with it all, but turns out I really didn't understand myself. As I forced a laugh, my mom squeezed my hand tightly. "I had no idea all this was happening. Why didn't you tell us sooner? It's the first I've heard about the divorce," my dad said. "Sorry to say this in front of you, Mom, but is Sally out of her mind?" I can't believe it. Both of them showed their anger towards Sally, and I could feel they were genuinely worried about me. I didn't want to worry anyone or make a big deal out of it. I thought I could handle it on my own. I felt embarrassed about the situation, and part of me believed Sally might be right, that maybe my lack of appeal caused all this. "That's nonsense. What are you talking about?" my mom said. "Anyone can see that Sally and your ex are the unbelievable ones. You did nothing wrong. To think you were suffering all alone." Both of them looked like they were about to cry. I regretted not leaning on those around me more. My mom suggested I come back home for a while, considering my mental and physical state. After the doctor also recommended rest, Natalie took care of the paperwork at work with my medical certificate. When my dad returned with drinks and heard I was resting at home, he immediately agreed that I should take the time off. Natalie explained everything to my work, and HR told me I'd had plenty of paid time off saved up, so I should take the time to rest. After thanking Natalie, she told me she'd do whatever she could, and that I should lean on her anytime. Over the next few days, I stayed at my parents' house. Natalie occasionally visited, and I could tell my mind and body were gradually recovering. I realized that bottling things up really isn't good. Today, Natalie visited again, and as we were enjoying cake prepared by my mom, my phone rang. Curious, I opened it, and my heart raced. It was a message from Sally. "Hey there, how are you doing? Thought you might be wondering about us, so I decided to reach out." Sally, who I hadn't spoken to since the fallout. I regretted letting my guard down and checking my phone. Natalie noticed the change in my expression. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Yeah, I'm fine," I replied, but it was clear something was off. Natalie asked if she could see my phone. I didn't want to worry her, but I had just realized that bottling things up wasn't good, so I nodded and handed her my phone. Natalie looked puzzled as she read the message. "What's this? Is she picking a fight? This is Sally, right?" I nodded in response, and Natalie closed the phone. "Just ignore it. Actually, let's block her. There's no point in dealing with someone like this." I agreed and opened my phone to block Sally. Just then, another message from Sally came in. "We've been living together smoothly since then, and guess what? I'm pregnant." You might be thinking already, but nope. John and I started our relationship 6 months ago. The word pregnant made time stop for me. We had been trying to conceive during so he hasn't regained consciousness. Guess he doesn't have long then, you know. Since I made the effort to come here, you should at least cover my travel and meal expenses. Her attitude was infuriating. I had not invited her, yet she had the audacity to demand compensation for her unasked visit. Struggling to keep my irritation from showing, I reminded myself that we were in a hospital surrounded by other patients and close to the nurse's station. The last thing I wanted was to cause a scene in front of Mike. I took out a bit more money than necessary from my wallet and handed it to her, anticipating her potential dissatisfaction with a lesser amount. I didn't want any further conversation with her at this moment. Seemingly satisfied with the amount, she left the room with a light step, mentioning she was going to eat. But just as she left, she stopped and called the child into the room. "You know who this is, right? My son, your nephew. I'm going to eat, so look after him for me," she commanded in an imposing tone, and quickly walked away from the hospital room, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. She moved so swiftly that I didn't even have a chance to say anything to her. The boy left behind seemed hesitant at first, but then approached me with a determined look. Hi, I have something Uncle asked me to give you, he said, referring to Mike. He gestured that he wanted to speak privately, so I crouched to his level. He took something out of his pocket and handed it to me. Uncle said to give this to you without Mom knowing. He said if I do well, I might be able to live with Dad. I patted his head a few times, telling him he did well. He handed me a letter from Mike. It wasn't a formal letter, just a piece of paper torn from a notebook. I read it quickly. Mike and his sister were supposed to meet at a cafe, but she suddenly asked him to come to her house instead. Mike suspected something was wrong and decided to keep track of what was happening. He mentioned an unusual injury he got around the time of his mother's death, which I didn't know about before. He must have treated it himself without telling me. The letter went on with an unbelievable story. During the argument over his mother's inheritance, Mike felt a strange sensation in his leg after walking through a crowd. He found a deep cut on his thigh and was shocked to discover a utility knife in his pocket. The knife blade wasn't exposed, but Mike thought it might have accidentally cut him if it was in just the wrong spot. Luckily, the cut seemed minor and was healing quickly, so he decided not to tell me and took care of it on his own. Now, Mike's sister was suggesting that she was responsible for the injury. She said she had tried to hurt him in the crowd, aiming for an artery but missed. She even knew exactly where the cut was. I checked Mike's thigh while he was unconscious and found the old cut. I hoped it wasn't real, but it was clear that someone had hurt him for the inheritance. The idea of someone causing harm just to get more inheritance was horrifying. Even though getting an inheritance is better than not, using violence to get a bigger share is unacceptable. Unfortunately, the cut on Mike's thigh confirmed his sister's malicious intent. I felt angry but carefully redressed Mike and focused back on the letter. Mike had written that he felt his life was in danger. It was clear he wrote the letter quickly while his sister was out of the room. Strangely, she had insisted on having her son, Mike's nephew, present during their inheritance discussion. Mike had loved his nephew, and she probably thought using him as part of a tearful plea would help her get more inheritance. Feeling threatened, Mike had instructed his nephew to give me the letter if anything happened to him. In the letter, Mike mentioned that there was evidence in the inner pocket of his jacket. I looked for the jacket he was wearing when he had the accident. It had bloodstains from the fall, showing how severe the accident was. I hadn't touched it since the nurse gave it to me with his other belongings. I reached into the inner pocket and found a hard object, a voice recorder. I remembered the doctor saying that people usually try to protect their head during a fall, but Mike had injuries on his arms, which suggested he was trying to protect his chest. The doctor had even asked if Mike had any heart conditions, which was surprising because Mike always bragged about his health and never had serious illnesses. The voice recorder explained everything. Mike had risked his life to protect it as evidence. I played the recording, and it was so shocking that I was speechless. The evidence was clear and could incriminate his sister. I quickly called the police. Soon after, Mike's sister came back, looking cheerful and patting her stomach. She demanded the chair I was using, sat down, crossed her legs, and started fixing her makeup. Even if she's my daughter, this is beyond what I can tolerate. I was relieved that Hannah wasn't as shocked as we feared, but still, this was going too far. I could see the anger burning in my parents' eyes. I was grateful for their support and anger on my behalf. It's addressed to me, so I don't have to go, right? I asked. My parents looked at me seriously. Mom and I will go, Dad said. We'll show them what hell looks like. Seeing my usually gentle parents this angry was new and made me uneasy. But it's addressed to me. Well, we're the parents of the bride. It would be rude not to attend, Mom said. We're looking forward to it. Really? I asked, feeling a mix of apprehension and gratitude. Mom and Dad exchanged smiles. I could only manage a weak smile in return. When I told Natalie, she wasn't surprised at all. Aren't your parents right? If you're related to the bride and groom, you have to attend. But wow, a wedding, huh? Natalie said with a smirk I could sense even over the phone. Everyone around me is strong, but they're also intimidating when they're angry. On the wedding day, I asked anxiously, "Are you really going? Are you sure?" "Why worry? There's nothing to be concerned about," Mom said with a smile, though her eyes didn't match. Dad's reaction was similar. He dismissed my concerns as they continued their preparations. I hoped they were right and ignored my worries. As I heard the sound of the car arriving, I went to check if they had called a taxi. To my surprise, it was Natalie's car. She stepped out, dressed in a glamorous party dress. "Natalie, what are you doing here?" I asked, shocked. "Good morning. Are Mom and Dad ready?" Not yet, Natalie replied, but I'm attending the wedding too. I was stunned. When my parents came out, I asked them what was going on. They explained that one of John's relatives is a friend of Natalie's, and after learning about the situation, Natalie was invited to attend as his relative's girlfriend. My parents didn't object and seemed eager to go together. I can't just stay quiet after what happened to Hannah, Natalie said. Though I was anxious, I agreed to let them go. My parents and Natalie left for the venue in the same car. I felt tempted to go too, but Natalie suggested, if you want to see, I can show you through a video call. I decided to stay home and rely on them. Curiosity got the better of me, so I contacted Natalie for a video call. Upon arriving at the venue, my parents and Natalie went to the reception. Natalie was listed thanks to John's relatives' arrangement, but my parents weren't on the guest list since they weren't officially invited. The receptionist went to confirm their names, and then Sally appeared. Sally was visibly surprised and confused to see my parents. "Why are you here?" she asked. "We're the parents of the bride. It's natural for us to come," Dad replied. "There must have been a mistake. We didn't receive an invitation." Sally forced a smile. The invitation was meant for Hannah. Yes, we were surprised when Hannah told us. We had no idea about the wedding since Hannah couldn't make it today because of work. We came instead. Sending an invitation to Hannah is fine, but you should have sent one to us too. It wouldn't look right without the bride's parents, Dad said, mentioning the lack of invitation twice. Though I couldn't see my parents' expressions through the video call Natalie was sharing, I could imagine their stern faces. Sally seemed genuinely convinced that my parents had come to celebrate her, which only showed how delusional she was. As John appeared, his face turned pale at the sight of my parents. Sally, in her delusion, tried to reassure John. "Relax, John. They came to celebrate with us. They must really love me, especially since Hannah is like that." John managed a forced smile as he greeted my parents, who were joined by John's parents. The atmosphere became friendly and warm, and I couldn't help but recall the fondness John's parents had shown me when I was married to their son. It stung a bit to think they might have only been nice because I was John's wife. This made me think it might have been the right decision not to attend. I murmured this thought to myself as the scene shifted to the ceremony and then to the reception. At the reception, Sally and John made their happy entrance. Natalie checked in on me occasionally to make sure I was okay, and I assured her I was fine. I was more concerned about my phone's battery, but Natalie had come prepared with a portable charger. As the time came for the letter of gratitude to the parents, Sally started to panic, clearly not expecting her own parents to be there. My parents took this opportunity to make a surprise announcement. They asked the MC for the microphone. During the whole situation with the sister-in-law and the police, the nephew had been scared and hiding behind me. He was very upset until he saw his father, which made him instantly happy. This was the first time I had met the former brother-in-law since my mother-in-law's funeral. I had contacted him for a reason related to the voice recorder Mike had protected. The sister-in-law had been very clear about her feelings towards her son. She had said she never wanted a child and only had him because she felt she had to. She didn't feel any affection for him, and most of his care was left to the former brother-in-law and his parents. When they divorced, the former brother-in-law thought he'd easily get custody. However, the sister-in-law managed to convincingly present herself as a devoted mother and won custody, likely because mothers often have an advantage in custody battles. The former brother-in-law accepted this, hoping maybe she had developed feelings for their son since she hadn't mistreated him. The idea of a maternal instinct didn't apply to her. In reality, she only took custody to get child support and spent the money on herself. Her behavior towards her son was cruel. She would deprive him of food and lock him in a closet. Mike's letter revealed he wanted to rescue his nephew from this situation, even if it meant giving up his entire inheritance. His insistence on involving a lawyer wasn't just about the inheritance, but also about protecting his nephew. Seeing Mike's determination, even when faced with danger from his sister, made me realize that I needed to be just as determined to help our nephew. I never relied on the inheritance. While having it is better than not, we are young and can make our own way. I wouldn't blame Mike for giving up his inheritance, especially if it was for his nephew's sake. Mike thought that by offering the entire inheritance, the sister-in-law, driven by greed, would give up custody of her nephew. The letter also mentioned that once the nephew was safely away from his mother, he would be entrusted to his father. However, given what happened to Mike, just transferring the inheritance and getting the nephew back wouldn't be enough. I felt the sister-in-law needed to be held accountable and made to regret her actions. The former brother-in-law became increasingly angry as I shared everything from Mike's letter. Seeing his son so changed, he blamed himself for what had happened. After the divorce, the nephew lived with his mother, but the former brother-in-law had managed to get a monthly visitation agreement. However, the sister-in-law never allowed him to visit his son and always made excuses to deny him access. She threatened that if he continued to insist, he would never see his nephew again, leaving him powerless. He regretted not confronting the sister-in-law earlier or checking on her secretly. He apologized repeatedly to his nephew and decided to confront his sister. It turned out that she had already been reported, not only for the suspicious circumstances around Mike's fall, but also for mistreating her children. The youth division arrived, wanting to hear from the nephew, and as a guardian, I was required to be involved. My ex-brother-in-law came with his son, and I was asked to join them. Since Mike's recovery was uncertain, he might wake up in an hour or even a year. It was important to focus on the nephew's situation first. At the police station, there was a confrontation between my ex-brother-in-law and Mike's sister, who was still just a person of interest. In her distress, or perhaps out of desperation, she started making outrageous accusations. She claimed, "It's him. This man told me to do it. He's a demon. I'm the real victim here, seduced by a demon into marriage." She even called her son a child of a demon. Her ex-husband couldn't stay silent and said, "What do you mean, child of a demon? Stop harming the kid. Blaming others and pushing Mike down makes you the real demon." Despite his logical argument, she wouldn't stop threatening. She said, "I'll make you suffer the same fate." Everyone at the police station looked at her with disdain as the police dragged her away, fearing she might harm others. The sister-in-law was detained, and the investigation quickly progressed. Surveillance footage from a shop near the staircase, where Mike was pushed, showed her making a pushing motion. Although the camera angle didn't confirm the push, the detective was confident they'd get a confession. With the sister-in-law in custody, the focus shifted to who would care for the nephew. Based on her recorded statements and the nephew's account, it was decided he should stay with my ex-brother-in-law. The nephew was thrilled to live with his dad, who, along with his parents, was making sure he was well taken care of. John's eyes widened in panic, realizing the gravity of the situation. His father added, "Don't decide on your own. You said I was the successor. You've already shown you're splendidly independent. Use that judgment to live your life from now on, together with the wonderful Sally." The message was clear. John's actions had consequences, and his father's decision to strip him of the successor position was a direct result of his choices. The scene was a dramatic turn of events that added another layer of intensity to the already chaotic reception. The crowd's reaction was a mix of shock and murmurs, and Sally looked increasingly uncomfortable. The spectacle was becoming a poignant reflection of the fallout from the choices John and Sally had made, and it was clear that the consequences were far-reaching. I was so amazed I couldn't believe my eyes. My former in-laws looked like they were laughing, but their eyes showed they were really angry, not happy like my parents. Natalie was chuckling and said, "They got what they deserved." I was trying hard not to laugh and was just speechless. Natalie then explained what had happened while I was gone. My former in-laws had come to apologize because they really thought of me like their own daughter. They had teamed up with my parents to pull off this surprise revenge. Natalie had been talking to my parents and also heard the story from John's relatives, so she knew everything. Hearing this made me emotional. I realized I had so many people who supported me and cared about me. It made me cry, and I couldn't talk properly. All I could do was nod and say thank you when I finally managed to. I saw my parents and former in-laws smiling warmly at me through the screen. Meanwhile, at the event, things were still chaotic with the staff trying to handle the mess. Then a man stood up and walked towards the stage. He stood in front of John, who then collapsed to his knees after hearing something from the man. Afterward, the man went back to his seat. "Hey, what did that man say?" I asked, trying to hear from where I was. "I can't really tell from here unless he uses a mic." "Maybe I should go ask him directly," Natalie said, heading towards the man with her phone. "Excuse me," Natalie said as she approached. The man turned around, and I was surprised to see it was my uncle, my dad's brother. Natalie showed him the screen with my image, and he looked surprised and very happy. "Hannah, are you okay? I heard about today from your dad. It must have been tough." "Thanks for asking, but I'm fine. By the way, what did you say to John just now?" "Oh, I told him that this hotel is run by me and I'll be claiming damages because the reception hall is a mess due to the bride and groom."